Hello and welcome to the Cougar Proud podcast. This is Greg Woods, WSU beat writer for the Spokesman Review, joined as always by Jamey of KookFan.com. I feel like I've said this a million times over the last 3 or 4 episodes. We have so much to get to just by the nature of the time of year that we're in. We got 28 players, Kook players in the portal as we speak. They have 20 re-signings. Their coaching staff is all but complete now as of we are recording this on Monday afternoon. So as of Monday morning, at least all the position group coaches are filled. So we'll get to all that. We'll get to some of the offers they have out and some of the replacements they're going to try to fill out of the portal. Our reactions to all of that has transpired over the last week and a half, which is how long we've gone without a podcast. So apologies for that, but
not technically true.
What do you mean?
Live podcast on Friday.
Oh, that is true. That is true. In terms of podcasts to hit Spotify and Apple and all the places that they go.
That is fair.
Since then. But if you also are not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please go check that out because we want to do more of those in the future. So keep an eye on that as well. But yeah, I don't even know the best place to start. Why don't we just kind of run through some of the bigger, actually, since we have the advantage of doing this after the new coaches were reported, let's just do that really quick. So their new running backs coach, according to Skyline Sports, is going to be Justin Green, who is the running backs coach at Montana for the past literally decade and a half, just about since 2012. He also is their lead recruiter. So that'll be the new running backs coach, and their new special teams coordinator and receivers coach is a name that some Kook fans might recognize, Derek Sage, who is the currently the tight ends coach at Toledo, who might remind you visited Pullman as back in October. So he will be making his return to here. He was the receivers coach under Mike Leach in 2017 here at WSU. So that was just for a year, but still no stranger to the Palouse at all.
Outside receivers coach, got to specify.
Outside receivers.
There were two back in the day.
Really?
They had outside and inside because they didn't have an offensive coordinator or quarterbacks coach because it was all Leach. So they had several other positions they could fill, and there was no tight ends coach.
Oh, that's a good point. But what difference does it make if you're outside receivers or inside? Is that big of a difference?
Just the route tree was very different under Leach because it was so specific to the outside receivers ran these routes, the insides ran these routes, and unlike what we've seen the last couple of years, the outside receivers were the outside receivers. Those were your big bodies, and the inside receivers were your inside receivers. Those were the speedy slot guys. So guys didn't really rotate. They weren't, moving in and out. It was you had X and Z outside, Y and H inside, and that was what you played. So you had separate coaches, and they had so many receivers at that time too that they needed two coaches.
Well, just goes to show you how offensive minded that staff was. I guess that's news to me. All right, so those are the new additions that were reported. Again, not official. Those were reported here on Monday morning. Sage was reported by The Athletic, and then Green was reported by Skyline Sports, who I have some friends there. So shout out to them. But anyway, that is all the position group coaches. So let me just run through these. And so we have kind of an inventory of who's who. So from the top, Matt Miller, offensive coordinator / quarterbacks coach. Trent Bray, defensive coordinator / linebackers coach. Jack Abercrombie, offensive line coach. Durham Cato, tight ends coach. Brandon Thompson, cornerbacks coach. Greg Burns, who was reported by, I think you guys, right, the other day as their new safeties coach.
Yep.
Then Green and Sage, like I just said. And then the last two are Andrew Browning and Etienne, who are going to be their defensive line coach. And the way we understand it is that Browning, who is coming from Cal, will focus more on the edges / pass rushers, and then Enna will focus on more of the interior defensive tackles. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11 coaches. And so outside of that, I think it'll just kind of come down to more like GAs and assistant, position group coaches and that kind of thing. So there it is. It took his introduction. He was hired on the December the 12th. So this took about 3 weeks or so for it all to come together. Seems pretty normal, I would say. Do any of these stand out. The one I want to talk about is the newest one, which is Justin Green, and the job he's done with Eli Gilman, who has just been a complete monster. I mean, I think the pipe dream for Cook fans is getting Gilman to Pullman, but I would be surprised.
Yeah, I think, what stands out is, first off, you've got the first time since 2011, you've got a Wazoo alumni as position coach with Greg Burns. You've got a guy like Derek Sage who's coached in Pullman. You got a guy like Trent Bray who's lived in Pullman. So there's a lot of connections on staff that I think are very kind of fascinating in that way. Eddie Enos worked at Eastern Washington. Brandon Thompson obviously worked with Kirby Moore played with Kirby Moore, as did Andrew Browning, as did Matt Miller. So there's a lot of connections, just one way or the other. Abercrombie at Missouri most recently. So, and then as well as Cato. The one guy who's kind of the quote unquote outlier, I think, is Green, who just, I think they probably said, hey, look at how good this guy, look at how good of a job this guy has done coaching running backs. Let's get him in here. So, but everyone else, there's some sort of connection, and actually Sage, for that matter, I don't believe has crossed paths with anyone, but a guy who obviously has experience here. So, and it's not often you can find a guy who's coached wide receivers and special teams. I mean, that's not a common mix. It's usually tight ends and special teams.
I was kind of taken aback by that. I'm like, what's the connection between receivers and, I guess some of them tend to play special teams, but I mean, like, what's the overlap in terms of the coaching staff?
I think it's just Sage has been able to do both. I think you look down the staff and there's just a lot of connections here to Pullman. And then, again, there's a few things. Obviously, Trent Bray was a head coach last year, so there's some connections there. We already saw that paid dividends in getting Jaleel Tucker. There's a couple other guys who have reported visits, Jaden Tuia on the offensive line. So I think, in a scenario where you can't just bring a roster because it's not a head coach the way that Jimmy Rogers came and brought 16 SDSU guys, having a guy like Bray who maybe has a little bit of that effect, not to that extreme, but can probably pull a few guys, I think does help. And yes, I know what the instant response as well. How many guys do you want off a 2-10 Oregon State team? And right. the counter to that would be, they did have good players. I mean, every team, it doesn't matter who you are, you have good players. Even the horrible Paul Wolf teams had good players at Washington State. So there are some good players in there. And you're just trying to replenish some depth, and you got to get bodies at some point. And that's an easy way to maybe kind of have some connections. And, I think the hope is that it was with a different full-blown coaching staff and maybe can bring the best out of some of the players. And then you look at some of those OSU guys, and they've got guys getting huge Power 4 interests. So I don't think there was a complete lack of talent. And actually their defense, I mean, it wasn't good, but it was, I think, 74th or 5th. So, a little bit below average, but not, it wasn't like it was the 119th defense or anything. I mean, it was...
they give up 32 to WSU.
This is true, but
which was not a particularly high-flying offense. But sorry, go ahead.
That is true. But I think just when you overall kind of look at the when you just kind of look at the baseline of it, I mean, it can't be as simple as you don't want guys off the 2-10 team. And I do think Bray helps bringing some continuity and some guys who know his system.
Yeah, I mean, how many times have we seen it, not just in football or even just college football, but just like sports in general, where you pluck, a guy off of a horrible team, then you put him in a better, more winning situation, and he ends up, flourishing. So could definitely see that playing out. The one guy you mentioned, did you mention Tucker already? The cornerback from Oregon State.
Yes, yeah.
He's one of 3 that they have gotten commitments from. The other 2 are Jalen Thomas, who is a cornerback with an N, cornerback from San Jose State. He started all 12 games last year. And then Nylan Brown is a linebacker transfer from Kent State, who both of those guys announced their decisions on Sunday. As I'm driving up to Spokane for the basketball game, which is just like the way it goes in our profession. So 3 guys that they have gotten commitments from, a lot more to go because of just the sheer amount of bodies that they're losing, especially on defense. And unfortunately for them, it's not all because of the graduation. I mean, I mentioned this at the top, but I mean, the 2 that they're going to miss the most, as far as guys that are surprises at least, are Bobby Terrell and Bryson Lamb, which right. I was pretty... Terrell, I was a little surprised by. Bryson Lamb, I was pretty stunned.
Yeah, I think I think especially Lamb told me in October, he wasn't doing the portal dance again, and obviously the coaching changes everything. I mean, I don't
Right.
think that it's fair to hold the guy to that word. When he said that, I think rightfully so, he expected the coaches to be in Pullman next year, and I think
Yeah.
that had that been the case, I think a lot of these guys would still be in Pullman if there had not been a coaching change. Obviously all the guys with the ties to Rogers from South Dakota State, Schlingen, Fitzmaurice, probably Polano, and so on. But I think, and the thing is too, is we always have to say this: there's always the potential for guys to come back. Now, is that a
Yeah.
common occurrence? No, but we have seen it with
It's
Kirby
literally happened. I mean,
Kirby
yeah.
Voorhees and Tony Freeman. Now, granted, neither of them entered the portal, but announced their intentions. And we saw last year,
Yeah.
Josh Meredith came back, Bryson Lamb came back, Zevi Eckhouse came back, Trey Lechner came back. So
Yeah.
there is always still that potential. But, I think ultimately, and this was kind of the big thing you were just kind of talking about, but the best players on this team, give or take a couple, graduated.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think you talk about Bobby Terrell, you talk about Lamb, you talk about Freeman, but you look at Large and Franzel and Humphrey and Colson, and the list goes on, and those guys graduated. So the portal damage that they're taking this year is not the same as last year. Now it's still, you still have to replace the guys, right? It doesn't matter if you lose player X, Y, and Z to the portal or graduation, you still have to replace them. But I think it's maybe it's easier in the fans' minds of knowing that a lot of the top guys were gone no matter what. There was no path back for them. They were just out of eligibility. Again, when you look at Large, you look at Franzel versus last year, where you're watching Mateer and O'Connor and Alukta and Gusta, all kind of the star players go elsewhere. And I do think there is something to be said too that team had a lot of more individual talent, whereas I think this team had kind of a better chemistry. It was obviously, I think, coached better than last year. So I think it's I think it's just an interesting concept of you look at Lamb and Terrell, and those are the two guys who I don't want to say, again, I don't want to say anyone's a shocker after a coaching change. I think I'd actually say, I was going to say Leo Pulalasi's surprising too, but then you look at what's available for the carries. But I think for the most part, with the exception of the guys who I think we were pretty confident were going to be leaving because of the ties, they did a pretty darn good job retaining a lot of kind of the wild cards. Lamb, Terrell, Pulalasi kind of being the outliers in that. But, I don't think when Jimmy Rogers left, anyone was really expecting Schlingen or Balloon or Polano or any of those guys to be back.
Anthony Polano, I texted you when I first saw this morning. Anthony Polano to Boston College. That seems strange to me. He has no ties to Northeast. There's no coach of his that went there. I just think it's kind of strange.
Yeah, I mean, you get an opportunity to play a little more, to play ACC football. I mean, good for him. I do wonder too, was he, because when he entered the portal, you and I both can agree, we expected, all right, he's going to Ames. Like, this is obvious. This is Rogers' guy. He took him. But I do wonder how much the possibility of Sullivan Schlingen going to Ames, I don't want to say scared him off, but maybe made him hesitate, just in the sense of Schlingen was the starter at the end of the season. Did he want to run the risk going there, knowing the possibility that he was going to end up number 2 again to a guy who's got 3 years of eligibility? So I do wonder, and I think there were probably some healthy offers out there for Polano. I mean, obviously there was ups and downs, but we really saw late in the season him come on strong. He cleaned up a lot of his tackling. He's got, again, 3 years of eligibility. So I do find it interesting, though.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I do find it interesting because he was one of the guys that I think we all pegged that, he's going to Iowa State. And obviously that is not where he ended up.
I thought he was like the perfect kind of guy, or a perfect kind of candidate to end up going to Iowa State. Young, plenty of upside. May not have started the entire season, but showed plenty of improvements. But it's also true that that's the kind of guy that gets a pretty big payday, which I imagine he got from Boston College. I don't know what their NIL situation is at Boston College football. They were also really bad, I believe, this last season.
They've been bad for I think a pretty good while.
Did you see any of the clips that came out of their head coach this season? He was beefing with report. I don't know. I forget his name.
It's Bill O'Brien. He was the Texans head coach.
Yeah, he was like blowing up at reporters throughout the season and just like had like weird beefs with them.
Yeah, no,
So,
they were. You know what? I was saying that. Oh, I think they've been bad for a while. They were 7-6 last year. So,
all right,
excuse me on that. But yeah,
full
2-10
eligible.
this year. Couple 7. But yeah, I mean they haven't won more than 7 games since 2009. So,
Oh, geez. Well,
yeah, they haven't had a winning record in conference play since that year as well. So it's
geez,
been a while, you know. And put it this way, that was the first year after Matt Ryan. That's how long it's been since they've really been.
geez.
But you know, they've been a consistent 7-ish win team over the years under Frank Spaziani, Steve Adazio, Jeff Halfley, and then even last year under O'Brien.
Yeah, I guess I just thought that like he's a Chicago guy. Maybe he would end up at like I don't know what's like
Northwestern.
North. Yeah, I thought about like Northwestern or like Illinois. That might have been too high. I don't know, but it just seemed like he would end up at a place like that because like he's that that's where he's from. He has no connection out there, but good for him. Best of luck to him.
And I believe he is the only transfer from Washington State to have publicly committed right now.
Yes,
I'm
that's what
sure there's a couple of guys
too.
who have committed to Iowa State that it just hasn't gone public yet, but
Privately,
I believe he's the only one, unless there is someone I'm forgetting. I believe he is the only one who has.
Yeah, that's what I said in my tweet today. I was like, well, it's the first of these 28 guys to, find a new home.
Yeah. And like we said, I'm sure there's a couple guys who have said they're going to Iowa State, but it is interesting that none of those are public yet.
Yeah, I feel like if it was like, because we feel like these are pretty much a done deal in terms of, where they're going to Iowa State, but it hasn't come out yet. Like especially like with the way that they're bleeding players, you would think they would want to get these guys, like, just at least for the optics.
Right. I mean,
like,
they're getting a lot of guys like other guys.
Yeah.
Like non-Wazoo guys. But yeah, I mean, I would have figured that would have been like, stuff they would have basically announced like Friday morning.
Really quickly. Yeah.
So it does make me wonder, is it just simply, they're delaying it a little bit, or is it like, are some of these other guys? I mean, Sullivan Schlimgen could probably get a number of offers from around the country. I don't think he is limited to Ames. Some of the younger guys like Tyrone Cotton, Trillian Sorrell probably don't have a lot of those big time offers just because there's not a lot of tape. But I mean, a guy like Schlimgen or even Donovan Fitzmaurice, I feel like could probably draw some looks from schools that aren't Iowa State. And I'll say this, in all likelihood, that is where they're going. But I do find it somewhat interesting that there are a couple guys that you do wonder about could they be looking elsewhere?
Yeah. I think it's probably, I mean, this is all just pure speculation on my part, but I think it's probably partially on the agents. Like, hey, you might be, pretty set on Iowa State, but let's try and create a little bit of leverage here by by kind of exploring our options and using that as a little bit of leverage too. So, but yeah, I think in the end, though, guys like that will end up at Iowa State.
Right.
So let's see what else we got here. So they're going to be out. Those guys we mentioned, Malaki Toste is also from the portal. Mike Sanjo, Max. I don't even really consider Max Balloon. I mean, they could really use him next year, but he was hurt for most of the season. Oh, he's a Rogers guy. I don't really consider him to be much of a material loss for Washington State.
No, well, like we said from the beginning, if you had said the minute Rogers left, all right, name one guy who's going, I think both would have said Max Balloon. My question is he good? I mean, I assume he'll be healthy for next year. We never really learned the nature of his injury, but I can't imagine he would still be out.
Term. I mean, he got hurt at the Apple Cup, right? So that was September the 20th.
Yeah, I mean, so you're thinking about the start of next season? I mean,
those guys can snap their fingers now and heal from all manner of injuries. So I would not be surprised if he was healthy for next season.
I mean, I would expect so. I guess I was kind of thinking timeline, but yeah, I mean, that was a guy that they never had a shot at keeping. I mean, once Rogers left, he was going to go. That was pretty obvious.
Yeah. But that is, I mean, as far as that position goes, that's going to be the one that they have to just get bodies in at the very least. Because like I said, Terrell, Lane, Balloon, Mike Sanjo was in the portal. He was hurt for most of the season.
He's kind of the same as Balloon, I think.
You think he's going to follow Rogers to Iowa? I don't think he's
No, let me rephrase that. And just in the sense of you can't, he doesn't necessarily even count as a loss because you didn't really have him this year.
He didn't. Right.
That's what I mean, yeah. He could follow Rogers, but.
Yeah. So just that, I mean, like, so they've lost $1 million. I mean, whether or not we consider them losses, they are names that are moving on from WSU. So
Yes.
they're going to have to really fill those spots, man, because that, I think a big part of why they were so good, and we talked about this a million times, but a big reason why they were so good on defense this year was the depth on the defensive line. And also thanks to Jalen Bibbs, who's going to be the Iowa State D-line coach now. Much deserved for him. But they have got to fill those spots. So this is, and you might have more intel than me, but this is just guys that I kind of gathered that have put stuff out publicly. So they have 2 offers out to defensive tackles. One of whom is Fadafehi Valea, who is a DT at North Texas, who has a visit scheduled, but he also just went on a visit to Oklahoma State, where his North Texas coach, Eric Morris, is now the head coach. So you got to keep that in mind.
And they have basically taken everyone they have wanted from North Texas. I mean, it's whether it's Caleb Hawkins or Drew Mestamaker. I mean, it's so.
Yeah, does he make it to Pullman though? You know what I mean?
That's the question. I mean, but they literally have 2 guys. They have 2 defensive tackles on the roster, not 2 scholarship defensive tackles, 2 defensive tackles. It's Beatty and Elijah Tucker. That's it. And then defensive end, they've got 3 guys who have either signed or announced they're coming back. Michael Hughes, Malachi Rice have signed. Fernando Laquona announced he's coming back. And then still no word on Ben Beatty, Luke Webb, Josh Weddle, Jack Proctor. I tend to believe, and you can tell me if you disagree with this, and then I know I'm sidetracking a little bit here, but
you're good.
9 guys out of 10 at this point, I think, when you for the Washington State roster, I would say 90% of the guys who have not made any declaration one way or another are probably coming back. Just in terms of I don't think there's a lot of other names that you're like, kind of like nervously waiting on. I don't think there's a lot of guys who would go suddenly get big time offers. I think any other guys who leave at this point were maybe ushered out by the staff, or yes, I'm sure there could be one guy who someone comes in with a money offer, but I think the bulk of the guys that were like kind of coin flips per se have either re-signed or have already left. So that's just kind of my feeling on a lot of it.
I wrote down a few of these names that are kind of in this weird limbo right now that are not in the portal and also have not re-signed. And I think the one that, well, there's a couple I think that they would do really well to resign, which is Kyle Peterson and Xavier Thorpe at the safety and offensive line spots. Because outside of that, it's like the bigger names that fit that bill are like Julian Duggar, Jamari Smith, who's played in the Potato Bowl, famous Idaho Potato Bowl. Got to get that right. Kyle Patu, who you are a giant fan of, based off of one play against Louisiana Tech. And then Hudson Cedarland is a tight end. And then the other 2, actually, I think these would be pretty good re-signings too. Landon Wright and Mackenzie Lane are 2 young wide receivers, both of whom played pretty well in the Potato Bowl.
Right. So like, kind of like my point was just like, are those guys, like, they made big plays here or there, but like, are they going to be getting really big? Like, they're not going to be going, I don't think, NIL hunting at this juncture. I mean, I think they both have a ton of upside, and maybe it's a different conversation at this time next year. But I don't see a team coming in and saying, hey, we're going to give you $300,000 to come play with. There just isn't enough tape on them. I mean, that's just kind of the long and the short of that.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that like, even I mean, the cynical side of me thinks that they'll look at like the right touchdown. Was it the right? Was it right? I get these 2 mixed up. Was it right that scored against Ole Miss on that long touchdown pass?
On the trick play. Yeah.
The cynical part of me thinks that like somehow like some coach from God knows what school will just look at the tape of those plays, like that one and then the touchdown front to a lane in the bowl game, be like, this guy's worth offering $100,000 to or something like that. I mean, I don't even know if that's like remotely possible, but there's so many schools right now that just have so much money to throw around. I mean, like Steve Hall last year, I mean, you would never have thought he would, he ended up at Missouri and got it back there. So I just like,
he was also a 13 game starter though. I think that's
you're right. That is a big difference. I'm just saying that like this, like the schools that have this money to throw around are like when they throw it around, it's not because like, hey, we want you to be our like top 2, top 3 guy. It's like, hey, we want this guy's a depth piece, and we have the money to do it. Now, whether or not we think that's like a smart decision is like that's another conversation.
And the thing I would like say to that too is a lot of times when they're doing that, they're paying the money for guys to be depth pieces that were starters elsewhere. Right. So like a Stephen Hall was like a rotational piece, I think, at Missouri. I mean, he played a good amount, but they're not taking depth pieces from other schools to be depth pieces, right? Like that's, I think, kind of the difference. The exception, again, I'm like Rogers taking some of the depth pieces, the young depth pieces to Iowa State. But I think that the depth pieces and again, if this was a 12-0 team or something, different story. But I don't know if there's a lot of teams looking at a 6-6 Wazoo roster that wasn't great offensively. And, looking at a guy like Wright, 7 for 121 and 2 touchdowns and saying that's a guy we want to pay big money for.
Yeah.
I think, and I think for his sake too, it's like you probably have a shot to have a pretty good year next year, right? They're graduating some guys. You got Freeman back. They're going to add portal guys. That's just the nature of the beast. But you're also going to be playing in a much more high-powered offense, an offense that's going to probably want to throw the ball a little bit more. Like you probably can see yourself like, hey, maybe at this time next year, I have 400 to 500 yards, 300 to 400 yards. Then there's really the opportunity. So I think he's and what we're trying to say here, and I don't want it to sound like we're saying, oh, Landon Wright isn't that. Like I do think he is going to be very good. It's there just isn't a lot of tape yet. He's played one season. And he had 7 catches. I think that he's still very much developing into what he can become.
Yeah, I guess the other possibility would be like, maybe they want to get on the field more than they figure they're going to be able to this next season.
And that is obviously, that is a factor for sure.
Like, I mean, we both agree they have very promising careers, but maybe they see it as like, hey, like, I have this potential, but Freeman's coming back. Who knows if they'll get on the portal? I want to make sure I get on the field. And then maybe jump off, the season after that to somewhere bigger and better. So, again, this is all just pure conjecture. We have we're not reporting anything. We're just kind of trying to think through this out loud.
I think we're just kind of where this came from is just like the guys who are going to draw the NIL money, the big NIL money, are either in the portal or have re-signed. And a lot of the guys now would either be like doing what you said, like trying to get on the field or staying. And I think you have to feel like, even this far into the portal, a lot of there's probably not a lot of guys like, I'm really weighing their options. It's like, yeah, I plan on staying unless, something drastic happens. Whereas the guys who've already entered were like, yeah, we're entering. Like they knew on day one. That's why you saw that flood.
Well, and that's also what makes getting guys back to be so meaningful. I mean, getting Kirby Voorhees back. By the way, I was watching Stranger Things when the Voorhees news dropped. I was like, dude, damn it. Like, good for them, but I'm trying to catch up on the show, dude.
I'd heard rumblings for a couple of days, but I'm like, it's always like, all right, you believe when you see it, but it was like, they started when Wazoo tweeted the eyes out, I'm like, all right,
something's going on.
I think we can go. It also looks like because of course Wazoo's going to start another flurry of staff.
Did you just see what I just saw
with Lorondo?
Yeah.
Executive.
Yeah, we didn't mention that one. Wait, what is it?
Brad Lorondo, executive senior associate AD and general manager.
That is a mouthful of a title. Good Lord.
Yeah, but he was talked about pretty highly from the Missouri folks about when Washington State was going to bring him. That's going to be a big loss.
Yeah. I even wonder, like, even though he hasn't been officially hired until right now, I also wonder, like, do they just have some like mystery NIL flow, and then like is he helping out with that
it
already?
Seems like there's been that whisper, and I haven't heard anything concrete, but there have been the rumbles that like there's suddenly a little bit more money all of a sudden, and it's like there's been all kinds of speculation. Like, is that what they just are using Jimmy Rogers' buyout on, where because they didn't have to pay anything for Kirby Moore?
Well, I saw that, but it's not. But they're not getting like a $4 million check from Iowa State. Like, I think it comes like in installments. So I don't think it's fair that goes.
But like Trent Bray also got money for a buyout. Would that be something that's putting that back in, or is there someone in Prosser who all of a sudden with Kirby Moore? Like it just does seem like I'll put it this way. It seems like in past years, guys like Voorhees and Freeman are gone.
Yeah.
And I think even if you want to believe some of the narratives that Iowa State didn't want them, which again I'm not buying personally, but they still could. They were still good enough to where other schools would have been interested in them.
Yeah, I mean, like there was a reason why both of us felt like Kirby Voorhees was not coming back at all.
No, like that was like Freeman. When Freeman entered, I think I want to say we were either at practice or something, and we were like, yeah, he's a guy I could see coming back, like getting wooed back by the opportunity to play in this offense. But I don't think there was much expectation that Voorhees was coming back. He's from Tampa. His coaching staff's all at Iowa State now. Like, you know,
what is keeping him in Pullman?
I personally thought there was a good chance, even if the coaching staff had stayed, that he may have transferred just to get closer to home. But you know, I think that's a guy where it makes you raise your eyebrows of, okay, is there a little bit more of a fund than maybe what there had been in previous years?
Yeah, because he's a guy. I mean, like, Lord knows how much money that guy would have gotten in the portal. I mean, like, he was going into the portal, and that's the kind of move you make when you want to, you know, one, you obviously want to move on, but also like you're in a position to get a pretty nice payday. And so for WSU to step up and like be the one that delivers that to him is just one. It's, you know, I'm sure it's a pleasant surprise for them, but it's also like maybe signals that there's, you know, some progress on the NIL front going on here within the program. So
yeah.
So those are the two big ones that we mentioned, but let me just run through the other ones that they've re-signed so far. So those two, Kirby Voorhees, Tony Freeman, Maxwell Woods, we have not mentioned, but pretty important re-signing. Yeah.
Another one who I didn't think was coming back.
No. I mean, same type of you know, profile where it's like he's a young guy, really good, gonna get paid. But ends up happening from WSU. So those three are big on offense. And then they also return, this is also pretty important, their top 5 offensive linemen with eligibility, which are left tackle Ashton Tripp, left guard Johnny Lester, center Kyle Martin, right guard Noah Dunham, then right tackle Jalen Caldwell. Another offensive lineman they returned is going to be Nick Bakken, who did not play, but could compete for snaps next year. The other two, so Trey Lechner and Bo Baker are also re-signing, two pretty big re-signings. I think we agree on that. Keith Brown was the first one, and he's been this like weird, like not weird, but just like orchestrator of like some of these moves. Like, hey, we got more coming.
Trey Ridley, he was on. I don't know if you saw this, but he was on last night, or maybe Saturday with the Couch GM podcast, and basically said like Iowa State wanted him. Like, he was ready to go, and
they want to keep Brown.
Yeah, and like,
wow,
and that Jack Thompson basically said stay, and you know, obviously, I'm sure then there was a little financial incentive as well, but I think it's interesting that they were able to kind of convince him to stay, and he's been obviously a pretty vocal presence in terms of, because you remember he tweeted out he was portaling, and then suddenly it was deleted.
Within like an hour or two.
And then the next thing we know, he's tweeting he's coming back. So,
and not only
I think that really started a good trend.
Yeah, he's been like, he went from like, I'm going to leave to now I'm like rallying the troops and getting people to come back.
Right.
What an arc for him. So Keith Brown, Trey Ridley is a safety that'll be coming back. Owen Esselman is
and we should say Ridley has not been announced by Washington State yet. But by
that
his
is
agency.
true. Yeah.
You can take that as you will. They're not going to just announce that for fun, but
and that's kind of what happened with Esselman too, where it's like it was at first it was only announced by his agency, but then it went on to be announced by WSU.
Right.
So can probably reasonably expect the same to happen for Ridley. Jack Stevens, their kicker, has re-signed.
That was a big one considering everyone who was after him.
Yeah, I think you had a story about like, was it like Tennessee or somebody like that?
Notre Dame, UW, South Carolina, Iowa State. Iowa State wanted them to be their backup kicker, so that's something. But
okay.
And he had all kinds of interest in. Here he is.
There he is. So And then the other few, I think you might have mentioned Caden Beatty already. That's a pretty important re-sign. He's a great player, but also just like they need bodies on the defensive line, and he was hurt for a lot of the year, so we didn't really get a full portrait of like what he's capable of. But I think if he can be healthy for a full year, I think he's going to be awesome.
Plus a guy who just oozes charisma and energy. He's been a vocal guy, and I'm sure he probably helped getting Nyland Brown from Kent State because they were teammates.
Right.
So I think that was a big one, not just from a playing standpoint, but from kind of a culture standpoint.
I also, speaking of former teammates who are now teammates again, I believe Keith Brown was teammates with Jaleel Tucker at Oregon.
He was
in 2022.
Yep.
So maybe he had a hand in that too. Who knows?
Could have been for sure.
Yeah. Michael Hughes, defensive end, re-signed. Carson Reynolds, linebacker, and then the last two were Isaiah Hung and Malachi Rice. And then I believe that brings into 20 re-signings as of Monday afternoon.
That sounds right. And I don't believe Reynolds has announced either. Or excuse me, I don't believe Reynolds has been announced, I should say.
I think, did they not?
I don't think they've announced his signing because I think there's few guys.
I might be thinking of Hung.
They announced Hung for sure. They haven't, by what I have written down, they have not announced Trey Ridley, Gage Jones, Reynolds, Elijah Tucker, Laquona, or Peyton Reed, and they have all said on social media that they're coming back.
Yeah, so that would make it like 24 or 25.
Something like that. And I think I saw Chris Leno post like "Go Cougs" on his Instagram story. I'm not quite ready to say that means he's for sure coming back, but you can kind of I think you can kind of take something out of that.
It's in the direction of coming back at the very least.
For sure.
So yeah, if that all comes together the way we expect it to, it'll be up to 24 or 25 re-signings. And I mean, that's good in terms of just bringing bodies back, but I just like the guys, the specific guys that they've been able to bring back have been like really important. Are there any in here? This is a question I posed on the little rundown. Are there any in here? Like, obviously we know how big of a re-signing it is to get Tony Freeman and Voorhees and guys like that back. Are there any in here that you feel like have flown under the radar a little bit that might end up being bigger re-signings than we think of them right now?
I mean, the guy who stands out is Eshelman, just from a quarterback perspective of it. And he was drawing pretty high reviews from the staff during the season and so on. So, that stands out. I do think that Isaiah Hung's got a chance to be a really good player. He played as a true freshman, granted a lot on special teams. Malachi Rice is a guy who obviously he's got the folk hero because he was, such a beast in the college football video games, but we saw a little bit of him.
That was just you, right? That was just you.
That was Heisman. That wasn't just me. That was everybody.
Who's everybody? Just like people,
like anyone who played with Wazoo in like the dynasty mode in like 2025. Like he became. I don't think he won a Heisman with everyone, but he became like a high 90 overall player.
Oh my god!
He developed crazy.
Oh my! And he won the Heisman as a defensive end for you. How many sacks tackles do you need with the Heisman at that position?
He had like 30 sacks or something. Well, he played. He would line up at the left end position, and that's the guy that I always use her with on college ball. So I would just use her with him all the time. I mean, going back to even like the old games, my best player was always going to be my left end, and they'd always just have ridiculous numbers because I would be the one controlling him, and just would break down blocks. But
that's unreal.
But I think even some of the flashes we saw of him in action this year, like there was some pretty impressive athleticism. He got after the quarterback a couple times. I think he's a guy. I think Michael Hughes the same thing that could become very effective pass rushers.
Well, and a subplot that goes on with every season is just like who the coaches are noticing on the scout team, which they'll bring up unprompted, prompted, whatever. And I mean, Malachi Rice's name came up all manner of times. I mean, whether it was during fall camp or during the season, I feel like, and his teammates really, I think his teammates were also similarly high on him, but just the pure athleticism. And he was kind of a risk. Not a risk, but like he comes from like Oklahoma. Had like maybe I think he had like a D2 offer out of high school, and that was literally it. That was literally it.
High upside, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I'm just saying that like it seems to be been paying off for them in terms of taking a little bit of a risk on a guy like that. And might be in the rotation next year. So yeah. What else we got here? Do we think, because as important as it is for them to bring back all those offensive linemen that I just mentioned, do we think they pull like a move like when they got AJ Vaipulu out of the portal last spring? Do we think that they just like run it back with this current offensive line, or do we think they want to add a piece or two to compete for snaps?
Absolutely want to add a piece or two, and I think there's evidence to that. You've got Jaden Tuia from Oregon State scheduled to visit. They offered Rayson Delgatti from Cal Poly, I want to say. They've got some competition for him. Let me make sure I have that right. Yeah, but I think, it's not as dire of a need as I think, as it probably is for other teams, and I think that's great. But I don't think the coaching staff is looking at the 5-6 guys they have and say, yeah, we're good. Not to mention, the fact of the matter is, obviously Tripp and Lester have experience, but there were only so many games that Kyle Martin, Noah Dunham, Jalen Caldwell played. Now, Caldwell obviously had experience at Grand Valley State, and I think you liked what you saw out of Martin and Dunham in their brief action, but it's not like you're returning five Christian Hilborn and Brock Dews. There's some inexperience in there. And I think, you have to breed competition. I think by not, you'd be doing a disservice not only to the team, but to the players themselves, not to have the iron sharpens iron and the kind of the guys pushing each other. So I definitely think they'll try and bring in a couple offensive linemen to really kind of add to that competition. And so you have depth. The thing is they've got the 5 guys who have played, right? But outside of that, the only other offensive linemen who have really played are Thorpe, Bakken, and Leno. And those are all very, very minimal snaps. It's not like those guys have played extensive snaps or so on. So you go into the year with 5 guys who have played offensive line snaps, you're running a bit of a risk. And I think I do think they're going to be maybe not as aggressive in terms of quantity, but I do think they'll probably try and take a couple of offensive linemen. By the way, Trillian Sorrell just signed with Iowa State, so figured I'd throw that in there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Okay. That one was pretty obvious.
I don't think either of us thought he would be coming back, but
no, or going
he's also he's also a Rogers guy through and through, so I'm not surprised by that.
Right. And Mike Banks.
Yeah, also a great point. As far as the offensive line thing goes, I totally agree, and I think this is this is like the one trope that I'm like really sick of in sports, and maybe it's just like the Warriors fan and me coming out, but I really hate it. I think teams are usually pretty misguided when they just kind of like bank on younger guys who don't have much experience, like being like developing at such a quick rate and all of a sudden being awesome. Again, I'm not trying to disparage any of these guys that are bringing back. They just haven't played very much. Like it's asking a lot for them to come back and like all of a sudden be 12, 13 game starters and be awesome. Like that would be a lot to ask of anybody. And so I just think like when teams I just think that they usually make a mistake when they just like rely on guys that don't have a lot of experience. Like, we'll just we're not really gonna we're not gonna worry about them. We're just gonna have them take the next step and we'll be good. And like the Warriors did that with all these horrible draft picks. And what do you know? Steph Curry is playing. He's 37. He's playing on completely mid team. Not that anybody cares about the Golden State Warriors. I'm just saying that is a pretty common thing that a lot of teams across sports do, and I think it usually does not work out. All right, so there is the guys that they're bringing back. We talked about the guys that have committed. Talked about the guys that are in the portal. Are there any other portal guys you want to bring up, or anything we didn't get to so far?
No, I think we got to most of it for now. Obviously stuff will continue to come out, but I think we covered most of the kind of the key points.
The risk you take in recording a podcast on January 5th, 2026 is that as soon as we get done recording, there will be some really big news that we did not get in here. So hopefully we'll be able to get this out quickly, and then there will be no big news by the time you're hearing this. All right, there's football. Why don't we get into a little bit of basketball? The Cougars have won 5 of the last 6 games, which if you saw that coming when they were 3-8, please raise your hand and then promptly put it down, because I don't. This has been.
By the way, Iowa State just signed Demarius Russell as well, so I'm guessing a flurry is about to come in for them. So
all right,
worth noting. But anyways, yes, back to basketball. Go ahead.
This is what we get for Jamey not always being focused on recording, is because he gets it works out for the better sometimes. All right, so basketball won 5 of the last 6, most recently an 81-67 win over Oregon State in Spokane on Sunday night. And like I said, 5 of the last 6. Oh, Jack Abercrombie just got confirmed by WSU offensive line coach. Sorry, that came in on my phone as we speak, so I had to get that in there. Basketball, 81-67 over Oregon State Sunday night in Spokane. 4 in double figures, including Jerome Morton, who for the longest time I was thinking, like, man, like, does he have some dirt on David Riley, or why is he like he is such a prominent part of the rotation, but he's not really like producing the way that you would think would come along with that. But lo and behold, he scored in double figures each of the last 2 games. I believe 13 last night. Had a couple big threes, hit this like fadeaway jumper that bailed him out of a bad possession toward the end of the shot clock. He's coming along, and I think maybe like individually the biggest storyline out of this game might be Adria Rodriguez, who had the most meaningful 7-point game you might ever see at the college basketball level. 3 for 3 at the free throw line, which for a guy that came in shooting 32% from the free throw line is mega encouraging. And then the other 4 points he had came on like steals and breakaways, where he was just like kind of able to use his athleticism and long arms and defensive acumen to make that happen. And ace class 16 points, I believe. 16 points. He's just him. Like this may be like a sneakily good development for them, but I didn't really think about that thoroughly until now. But like for him to just be like putting up 15-16 with regularity after kind of going through it a few weeks ago, I think is like a real step in the right direction for him. Like, because he had this like his like the whole deal is, you know, the way it goes is he had 40 points against ASU, and then, you know, next thing you know, you're high on the scout, it's harder to produce and all that. But he seems to be kind of finding his niche toward the top of the scout and kind of figuring out, okay, here's how to navigate these like really hard hedges. Here's how to, you know, hit the short roll. Here's how to play off of that and get the ball back, which ends up being a big part of how he scored on Sunday. So, but they have a tough stretch in the next 3 games, and it becomes tougher with the loss of Tomas Throsterson, who has a stress fracture in his foot, expected to miss at least the next 4 weeks, is what David Riley told us after the game, which brutal blow. I mean, my God, he started 13 of his 14 games. Awesome defender, 10 points a game, pretty consistent shooter. Like, I know they've been kind of, you know, treading water they've lost 2 games, and they've won their last 2 without him. But the next 3 are Gonzaga is not first. St. Mary's is first next Saturday, this coming Saturday. Gonzaga, and then San Francisco, which are, I mean, 3 of the top 14 teams in the league so far. So that's going to be brutal. But I feel like if they showed anything over the last 3 or 4 games, that, like, you know, it might not be as devastating as it might have been at the beginning of the season.
Right. I mean, I think, you know, are these winnable games coming up? St. Mary's and Gonzaga. It's not an indictment on Washington State. They're just really good.
They're really, really good. Yeah.
I go back and forth with San Francisco, and it's partly because I'm just not that sold on San Francisco.
No?
I don't know. They didn't beat Portland by that much at home, I'll add. They didn't beat San Diego by that much at home. They lost to Oregon State. I mean, I just don't know how good they are. And I'm not saying Washington State's going to go down there and beat them, but I think that game is a lot more winnable than maybe we would have thought in November, because I did think San Francisco was going to be very good, but I don't think it has all come together.
It's on the road, though, is the thing.
That is absolutely the tough part. That will be the challenging part.
If it were here, I'd be like, okay, yeah, I think they'll win. But
I'm not saying I think they'll win. I don't think that game is as cut and dry as the other 2 are, for sure. I do think that is a game they can win. Now, will they win? Would I predict them to win? Not necessarily, but I do think it is a game that they have the capability of winning, whereas it's hard to say that for St. Mary's and Gonzaga. Just when you look at what St. Mary's just beat Seattle U by 17 and scored 93 on them. I mean, no one scores 93 on Seattle U this year. That defense is just outrageous.
If we've learned anything over the last week, it's that Seattle U is a pretty freaking good team.
Seattle U hadn't even given up 80 this year, except for to Gonzaga in overtime.
In overtime, yeah.
And same. I mean, the last time they gave up that many points was ironically they gave up 93 to Eastern Washington last year. Which
were you watching the Seattle U and Gonzaga game?
I had it on because that was right during the Wazoo LMU game, right?
Yeah,
I had it on kind of towards the end, and
I was watching that. I mean, I was at the game. I was watching on my laptop because it was at a point like that game, the Zags and Seattle U game was like coming down to the wire right at the time where the Cougs were kind of pulling away from LMU.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like staying focused on the Coug game, but I was like, this game right here is getting kind of crazy. But then the Wazoo game ends up being similarly really close, so I had to lock in on that again. But yeah, man, Seattle U is going to be awesome, man. They're
awesome. Gonna. I think their schedule they've got OSU, San Diego, then they got Gonzaga again, and then they have just this run of all the sub 100/200 teams in Ken Palm before they get to Santa Clara. Now, I do think Wazoo can beat them in Pullman. But that is a difficult game for sure.
They just defend the hell out of you. It is just and that's the thing. That's honestly like one of the bigger weaknesses with this WSU team is that the ball pressure can really get to them. Not only in the full court setting, but just in the half court. We're going to get in your face. We're not going to let you get into your sets. Because they're a team that relies pretty heavily on like, hey, we're gonna react. We have our base set or two that we play off of that. Well, when the ball pressure is that severe and you can't get your sets, then you just end up with these like really clunky like post ups for Indy Okafor and Emily Oahu, who are capable players, but like that's the last resort. That's the last resort for a reason. And they scored 55 against them the other day in Seattle. So I just and it's because you see what ball pressure does, and I think that's like another next evolution of a David Riley team is that a team that can really withstand some of that ball pressure and full court pressure. Because as good as they looked against Oregon State, that was a terrible defensive team. I mean, they were just not good. Like they were like in the 200s, I think, in the defensive metrics on Ken Palm. So I just like, I'm not trying to diminish what they did, but but there's a reason why they scored 87 on.
Oregon State is really bad, but still, there is an art of actually being
able to beat who's in front of you.
There's been a lot of other bad teams that they haven't been able to really effectively score against. So
right.
Portland's not a particularly good defensive team either. They only scored 67. So
no, and I think that I do think that at first I'll be honest, I wasn't really buying the David Riley. We had a tough non-conference and that really got us bad. I wasn't really drinking that Kool-Aid for a little bit, but I might be taking a bigger sip right now, to be honest. You look over the last, with the exception of Seattle U, and again we see that's a pretty darn good team. I mean, you've won 5 of 6, and no, they have not exactly beaten world beaters in that stance or in that span. But they still got to win the games on the schedule, right? And that still includes, shutting down an Eastern Washington offense that, as bad as Eastern is, they can score. They have been able to score points this year. Taking USC to the limit, able to kind of flip the script against both Portland and LMU in games that the way that those went for a while, they would have lost last year, right? That Portland run to go up 8, they lose that game. The LMU to be down 14 early, they lose that game. So I do think there is something to be said about that. And then, again, as bad as Oregon State is, they do have a couple of nice wins in there this year, San Francisco and Arizona State. And they just kind of throttled from start to finish. They also got 30 piece by Pacific.
Yes, they did. They're a bad team. They are a bad team. But bad teams have good days. And a lot of times last year, bad teams had good days against Washington State. So I think it's a good sign that really the only bad, I don't even want to say bad. I mean, I was going to say the only bad team to really have that kind of day so far against this year or Wazoo this year is Idaho. And Idaho's not an embarrassment like everyone thought at the start of the year. I mean, they're 189.
You can't lose to Idaho.
I agree. I agree, but I'm saying it's not like losing to Pacific last year.
Is losing to Pacific worse than losing to Idaho?
Pacific was like 280
I know they were.
in Ken Palm.
I know they were terrible, but I also think there's like an optic side of it where it's like, hey,
Well,
there's this.
I can grant you that, but like
There's
Pacific,
this FCS team right next to us that came into our place and just freaking whacked us.
when Pacific beat Wazoo in Stockton last year, they were 301st in Ken Palm. They are markedly worse than Idaho is this year.
Yeah.
But then like Davidson and Bradley, like, those are like, again, they're not great, but they're 130. Like those are like, those aren't like just horrendous like mine. Those are the type, I'll put it this way. Those are the type of losses that even Kyle Smith would occasionally have.
Yeah.
Versus like losing a Pacific or Idaho and so on. And I think they've avoided some of those. I mean, Kyle lost to Cal and ASU even in the tournament year, and they were 121 and 127 in Ken Palm. So
yeah,
I do think they have done a better job and not always being someone else's career night.
The last Kyle year was when they went to the tournament, and I believe the year before, which was before my time, they had a pretty similar non-conference, right? Where they got injured a bunch, or maybe they didn't get injured, but it was just a really tough non-conference. Like the way I remember it being described.
Yep.
And then did that end up like benefiting them in the long run? I'm trying to think that like people were probably freaking out around that time too, and after that they lost to Hawaii.
I forget. I think it was the Diamond Head Classic. It was one of the tournaments. And dropped the 5-7 on the year. And actually, they were 5-9 at one point. They had UCLA beaten and blew a late lead. They were 5-9, 0-3 in conference, and the Kyle Smith pitchforks were out. Not by everyone, and not by the smartest of the fans, but people wanted Kyle.
Not by me.
But like, they had lost to Prairie View A&M. They had lost to UNLV. They had blown a game they should have won against Utah. They had gotten beaten soundly by Hawaii. Like, they were consistently, losing games, and they got hot for a little bit. Then they cooled way off again, and then finally they ended up winning 6 in a row. But even then, that season ended with Steel Ventures torching them in Pullman. That was the second time David Riley beat them. And even the year before, where they lost to Eastern Washington and South Dakota State and New Mexico State all in conference play, and had the just horrendous 14-minute scoring drought against Stanford. So, as good as Kyle was in Pullman, they had those slip-ups. They had those games where you just went, really? I'll put it this way. Right now, Wazoo's worst loss in Ken Palm is Idaho, which is number 189 in Ken Palm. During his time at Washington State, Kyle Smith had 3 different seasons with a loss to a team worse than that.
Yeah.
The only ones he didn't were the tournament year and the COVID year, partly because there was no one that bad in the Pac-12, and every non-conference game they played was at home. So,
well, I think. Anyway, I just bring that up because I think that like so much of the way David Riley runs not only the offense, but just like his coaching style in general relies on guys getting better the more experience they get, especially with the offense he runs. And so I do think that like I am a little bit surprised by the way they've kind of rebounded after that 3-8 start, but I also don't think we should be shocked either, just because of like he's obviously a guy that needs a little bit of time, especially with all of these, a bazillion new guys. And when they when they finally start to figure things out, it's like, well, now you can see, his coaching kick in, and like, I just think that there's like so many just weird things, or not like weird things, but it's just like he's a coach that needs time, and when he has time, you see what can happen. Now, that they're also
they're 301st in D1 experience according to Ken Palm.
301. Oh my God,
that's not very high. There's 365 teams.
That's probably. Are there any like WCC or like old Pac-12 teams in that mix, or is that pretty low?
Santa Clara. Actually, Santa Clara, St. Mary's, and Portland all are. But
okay. Well,
you're also getting, there's also, St. Mary's is pulling in a different level of guy. And the problem I have with that is it's like St. Mary's also brought back Paulius Morauskas, who's like a top 10 player in Ken Palm this year. Like Santa Clara brought, a lot of that experience comes from like the fact that, that some of these guys played a few games here or there. They didn't have like one like truly established guy the way that Santa Clara brought back like Elijah Mahi and Brenton Napper. And that St. Mary's brought back Morauskas and Mikey Lewis and so on. And then and Harry Wessels. And then obviously Portland is very young, but also Fitzmaurice just signed with Iowa State as well.
Oh, okay.
So,
well,
another one I expected.
In the span of an hour, three guys that we knew or we figured were gone aren't that gone. Yeah. All right. Well, as far as the basketball thing goes, with that, like, as much as they've gotten better in the last 6 games, it also can cut in the opposite direction, where if they don't continue to get better or if they get worse, then that's probably an indictment on the way things are on Riley himself too. Because I just like for this momentum to keep up and for him to have this, at least some level of trust from the administration to the fans to the players themselves, like they have to at least like keep still showing some signs of life and feel like there are some things that they're getting better at, because that's kind of what he relies on as a coach. And so I just feel like, sorry, I kind of threw my train of thought off. I'm not gonna lie, but like they have these 3 games coming up: St. Mary's, Gonzaga, and USF. I think if they can win just one of those 3, I think they'll be in a good spot. I don't think anybody's gonna be picking them to beat Gonzaga. Definitely not St. Mary's. But have them get through these next 2 games, maybe beat USF at home, and then kind of reevaluate from there. Because I can already see it. They're gonna go lose St. Mary's. They're gonna lose to Gonzaga, and people are gonna be like, "Oh my God, David Riley!" You know what I mean? Like the pitchforks are gonna be back out. When in reality, those are 2 of the better teams in the country, not just in the WCC.
Right.
So
right.
So I think it'll be better to reevaluate them after the San Francisco game, and we can kind of go from there, especially because they don't have to Astros. So I think once they get to that part of the schedule, we can kind of evaluate them in earnest, and not to let them off the hook for these next 2 games, because if they look completely non-competitive, it's like, well, that's a data point too.
Right.
We're not just going to write them off entirely, but look competitive in those. Maybe beat USF at home, and we'll go from there. So yeah, all right, cool. Well, we've covered some basketball. We've covered some football during basketball with guys signing with Iowa State. Do you have anything else to add?
I'm good.
You're good. Okay. Well.
Yep.
Sweet. Well, we will go ahead and get out of here. We're going to try to get on a more of a Monday schedule from now on. We were doing Tuesdays during the football season because Mondays were Rogers' press conference, and it was easier to kind of go off that and preview the upcoming opponent. But now that season's over, we can kind of get on a different type of schedule. So we're going to go on Mondays from now on, like I said, and I would say it's going to be all basketball, but covering college football in 2026 means that football never really ends. So we're sure there will be more of that too. So yeah, we are going to get out of here now. And Jamey, I will talk to you next week.